I'm back, and I'm ready to start another year of Caveman entertainment. Hopefully nothing horrible is happening right now, right as the year kicks off. Welcome to the third episode of our Divine Journey 2 experience. Last episode, we began harnessing the power of nature and the moon, all the while starting the Industrial Revolution. Let's not worry about how we can still use moon magic when we're actively producing pollution. It's not important. Besides, if the moon didn't give me the power, I'd hold it at gunpoint until it did. This episode, however, is going to be focused entirely on the Roots chapter, as we actually don't need immersive engineering for the rest of Chapter 3, and this chapter ended up taking quite a lot of time. So, if you're at all confused on the watch order, just refer to the playlist. Also, consider hitting that like and sub button. If we hit 100,000 subs by the end of the year, I will play GregTech New Horizons to completion. Or don't. I mean, hey, you do you. I'm not your mom. Let's return where we left off. And by that, I mean make a correction. Fun fact, did you know that the old HUD was actually off by an entire day? So not only was it counting days early, it was just bad at counting in general. Better HUD my caveman ass. Anyways, I feel like being consistent, so I legit sat here and did nothing until the day count was back on track. Seriously, don't know how a mod can goof up the basic concept of counting Minecraft days, especially since Minecraft does it for you, but, you know, oh well. We got it replaced now, so it should be fixed. Day 66. Let's start off with revisiting the quest book to see what we have to do next. Setting our sights on roots, we actually need to acquire runestones to upgrade our ritual strength, on top of which we never actually activated our grove stones, so we have to actually do a ritual to achieve that as well. Runestones are crafted using charred stone, so I have to stockpile on more of that, so the entire morning of day 66 was spent mass-producing charred stone. Once I got as much charred stone as I could, I then went to get the resources to start our grove stone activation ritual. Fortunately, we already have everything we need for this process. Only downside is I'm a brainlet, and I spent a lot of time trying to mash terraspores into cobblestone like a baby with a shapes and holes puzzle toy. I eventually remembered it needed water, don't worry. We end the day by finishing the ritual, then using our Fey Crafter from the end of the last episode to make the runestones, completing a quest at the literal start of the episode. I can feel the speed of our progress already. That being said, it was already well into nighttime, so I opted to sleep the rest of our first day away. Day 67. Oh my god, I forgot to update the members and comments wall. I'm going to do a cool thing where instead of just doing cobblestone, I'm going to segment the wall for each episode using a different material. Since we did more of roots than immersive engineering, even though it would set me back on some charred stone, I figured using charred stone would be the perfect material for this. So special thanks to Melon Siggy, Dragon Ugtwug, Final Cakes, Taylor Zick the Moth, Gakame's Shadow, I think that's how you say that anyways, Omi Chromium, Crashmaster7689, and Masri WT2252. As always, thank you all so much for helping to keep the lights on, and I hope to keep providing quality work for the foreseeable future. Now onto the comment side. Wrecking Ball said, Direwolf 20 style base I see. Gonna be totally honest, I sort of forgot he does this shit. I suppose it's just a rite of passage for modded Minecraft players. Anonymous said that the members board was nice and reminded them of simpler times. I'm glad you like it, but on that note, I got a lot of comments saying something about a fanshin and that supposedly Stampy did this sort of thing as well. Fun fact, I've never watched Stampy. Like, not even once. That's not me throwing shade, I'm just putting that out there. So when I read in my comments that others had done this sort of thing, I was sort of caught off guard. Still cool y'all are vibing with it though, even if it was inadvertently going from a channel I've never seen. Casual Furry says, I can also use /back. Alright, well, let's test it. What do you mean I can only use it once? I haven't used it! I've used it nonce! Fucking fine. Okay, I believe you, but clearly the mod pack has decided I don't get this function. Random's Playing said if I built a Walmart parking lot, my soul would die. Challenge accepted. Don't know if I'm gonna start doing it this episode though. Someone remind me we start doing like larger scale building to make that parking lot. Thanks. Lastly, our member Funny Looking Bird said, it's hilarious that you're surprised about receiving support. Well, yeah. Do you know how surreal it is to be given support to run a series that boils down to a caveman floundering around in a mod pack and things conveniently work? Let alone receiving money for something I make for free? Of course it blows my mind. I do highly appreciate it though, this isn't me knocking it, just saying it's definitely an odd feeling that I gotta get used to. Thanks again for all these lovely comments, and I can't wait to see all the new comments this video produces. Let's get back to the goal though. I returned to my tasks by building the pillars needed for higher tier root rituals. I also messed around with these digital hallucinations, which are apparently useful, but their locking mechanism always plants into the ground, so really you should just visually ogle it till you're satisfied. I also collected the reward for the runestone. That's the name we're giving that, huh? Worst part is I have no idea what it does, so I'm just gonna ignore it. Why? Names seemingly pulled from old American history aside, I also got around to crafting the staff so we can start casting spells. You know, when we imbue it with spell types, of course, but still, progress is progress. After I craft the staff, I throw myself into bed and end the day. Day 68, Happy New Year, I say as I finally return to work on this mod pack on the first day my vacation ended. A much needed one too. The 2 weeks of rest really allowed me to recharge my tism juices. Anyways, where were we? Ah yes, knocking out roots. While I know we wanted to craft spells, I've actually been eyeballing this elemental soil stuff. The prospect of making my farms turbo crunk sounded like a good time, especially when you can increase the yield or make it grow faster. All that being said though, we need compacted dirt and gravel as well as the usual petals and terra moss, which means we're gonna have to empty out our inventory. On top of which, we have to actually get some proper tools for terraforming. We should probably start with sorting out our unsorted garbage first though. The whole day was inventory management as well as finally understanding the value of compacting drawers. Should probably get some upgrades for them. In due time though. I was also informed that the reinforcement modifier in Tinkers is real, which might be super useful as an indestructible terraforming tool would be really handy for a number of things. One of these things we will witness very soon. However, by the time I sorted out my whole inventory, it was nighttime, so I mass crafted bindings to be sacrificed to the reinforcement gods and slept the day away, ending day 68, first day of the year of 2026. God, that reminds me, I'm about to be 26. I'm gonna be 26 and still playing a block game. Huh. Oh well, I'm still having fun that pays for my bills, existentialism aside, living the dream. Day 69. Nice. Anyways, the yellowite I threw into our smeltery is draining currently, and we need tons of obsidian to make indestructible tools, so while that's draining out, it's time to dive into the stinky hole. I spent a large chunk of the day getting enough obsidian and gems to replace the entire cast of Steven Universe, abusing vein mine to the fullest extent. I TP'd back home halfway into the day and began to smelt down some gold, which I then turned into sacrificial binding cast. The reinforcement recipe requires 8 obsidian and a gold cast of any kind, so, binding seemed the cheapest to get. After getting 12 casts, I ran back home, crafted 8 of the 12 into reinforcements, and slept to the end of the day. Day 70, unironically, the whole day was spent making the hammer. The usual, smelting metals, making hammer bits, accidentally making too many ardite plates, fixing that, then got the hammer made. Nothing to note, really. Well, outside of the fact we don't have enough modifiers on this hammer to make it unbreakable, I should probably work towards getting slime farms going to get embossment resources. Only issue is that not only requires slime islands for consistent sourcing, but it also requires magma slimes. So we're gonna cope with just having an almost unbreakable hammer and calling it a day for now. Day 71, now for the excavator. Yeah, we need 2 mass terraforming tools, not 1. Fortunately, this time I was smart enough to use paper. But before we get to that point, we actually need more cobalt. Into the Nether, where I'm accosted by a ghast for a little longer than I'd like to be, and I stumble into a conveniently placed fortress. This is going to be crazy useful. I'm going to go ahead and pick up this blaze spawner for later. I spent the day grabbing a lot of cobalt and ardite, as well as a rather interesting amount of diamonds. Once I was done spelunking, I went back home to spend the rest of the day making the excavator. Now we have 2 big terraforming tools, which means it's time to start something really belligerently brain dead. If I had never received the tests and documentation, I feel like this could double as active recorded evidence of my weapons-grade autism. I spent 7 days, slept through none of them, by the way, removing this mountain like a brain-damaged iPad baby. All of this under the guise of needing dirt and gravel. I'm not even joking, nothing else of value happened. Okay, well, only mostly true. There were 2 notable things on day 76. Day 76, I built a new bird cage because they kept escaping, basically making a greenhouse deep fryer for them. We'll have KFC in no time. Then my buffalo pulled a Houdini, as in they magically escaped their enclosure and have vanished before my very eyes, with no warning. Classic. Guess we'll get those assholes back later. Anyhoozles, if you ever questioned if I would enjoy Greg Tech New Horizons to completion, refer to this clip, recognize that 7 times 30 is 210, meaning I spent 3.5 hours on this, and never ask me that question again. 100k subs, lads. 100k free button presses. That's all it takes. Day 80, let's make the elemental soil. Get some compressed dirt and gravel that we obtained while stomping the world flat, some flowers, terra moss, and discover that bone blocks can be crafted with bone meal. Good stuff. We now are the proud owners of elemental soil, completing this quest and unlocking the next one. Elemental soil has a pretty unique crafting method for its alternative forms, where instead of a legit recipe, it instead will transform upon being dropped into a certain place, such as into lava, water, above Y90, and below Y30. These 4 particular methods completing the quest that demonstrates this. I decided to go with magmatic soil for now because it instantly cooks whatever it grows, so now instead of wasting coal and twiddling thumbs until I can eat again, I have solved world hunger before mechanism. World hunger admittedly probably easy to solve since I'm the only sentient creature in this world. Well, sentient as far as cavemen go. Anyways, day 81 we need to actually get around to making this Dugonia, as it's one of the prerequisites to unlock the rest of the quest lines, but to make one we need lily pads, which you can craft with these essences we literally don't have access to yet, or... Okay, so let's be real, that's not an option. Give me the nature compass, we're walking. I ain't gonna touch Botania unless I absolutely have to. Luckily, our nearest swamp was only a quick 500 block jaunt. After wandering the woods, I found the swamp and nabbed a decent amount of lily pads. I would look into how to make more of these lily pads in an efficient way, but you can plant Begonias to get more of them, so I'll save them and cross that bridge when I get there. After goofing up the ritual a few times, we get our hands on some Begonias. After which, I promptly make some aqueous soil so auto-harvest after planting, marking another quest done and mass production started, ending this rather productive day. Day 82. while our Dugonias go through the growth process, let's eyeball an optional thing that I discovered while digging around JEI, the dank knoll. No, it's not a sticky icky joke. Stop it. This storage mod is something I was aware of, but just never got around to it. But for those of you who don't know this gem of a mod, it is insanely busted. The concept is that it doubles as a place to store all the stuff that clutters inventory fast in high volume. So instead of having to finagle my backpack every time I pick up a single bit of sand, it would just go in there and I wouldn't have to think about it. It's not even particularly expensive either, so this should be easy. I made one and upgraded it straight to Mark II, which holds 512 of any given item in a slot. So now, when I clear this mountain out, I can keep going without my inventory being crammed. The Dugonias still hadn't grown though, so I spent the end of the day just clearing out more of this mountain. I figured I might as well not leave a job half finished. Plus, all that flat space would make for excellent real estate for machinery, builds, and the big parking lot I want to build. Maybe I'll even redesign this flat land to look like a parking lot. Who knows? I don't. Alright, so with the Dugonias taking as long as they are, I think we need to start figuring out this bone meal problem. Not just because I can bone meal them to grow them faster, but also because we can make more bone blocks to get more of that elemental soil, thus greatly increasing our max output during these long intervals. Our only option at this time for consistent bones is eagle farming, as eagle bones do produce equivalent bone meal to skeletons, so we need salmon. Fishing day! Kinda only took a portion of the day, but I still want to take this time to talk to you. First off, Happy New Year! Sorry for that long downtime between episodes. Not only did I need the vacation time, but my family swung into town and I couldn't afford to miss it. I had a grand old time though, and I've got more energy than ever now. On another note, I know I've stated that the goal was to reach 100,000 subscribers this year so we can get the GregTech New Horizons to completion, but I don't think I ever elaborated as to why I set that insane goal up. To those of you who are unaware, 100,000 is the sub count required for a silver play button, which would be a physical award to show off that these 5 years of hard work have paid off. It's not even about the money, Spider-Man. It's about giving me my career equivalent of a college degree. So even if you don't want GregTech New Horizons, but you do want to support what I do, the sub button does wonders. Same with the like button. As always, I'm not going to be upset if you don't. You know, you do you and all, but I just thought I'd be a little more transparent about it for you guys. Moving on, I realized my cleaver did not have the luck modifier on it, so I swiftly solved that. We need all that looting we can get for farming. Shocked I didn't have it sooner. After a couple of salmon, an unfortunate eagle, and a stray boner later, we now have far more elemental soil, of which I turned loosely half into each of the types I'm already using. I then used my loose bone meal to make more Dugonias by force, then planted those Dugonias. Sure, I probably could have kept one to complete a quest or two, but I figured it'd be better if I, sped up this process instead. Day 84, since we basically have to wait for our bone sources and for nighttime to gather bones off monsters, I spent today continuing with removing the mountain from the face of the earth. Had to make some sharpening kits and make some eagles. Outside of that, this was pretty much it for the early day. During nighttime, on the other hand, I ran into a couple of interesting things. Outside of only 2 skeletons, I also ran into this weird cactus creature. Not entirely sure what its purpose is, it just sort of sat there. Easy pickings though. On the other hand, we have ender spiders, which almost got me, but then I murked it and it for some reason dropped an enderman head. I mean, sure, I guess. Maybe it's an ID problem, I'm just confused. Like, just imagine a public execution in medieval France ending with another person's head magically replacing the head of the person decapitated. It's just weird. Anyways, new day. Day 85. Thanks to our bone meal acquisitions, we have a whole row of Dugonias growing, so we are golden. Now to work on Perescias, which requires magenta dye, lilac, glistering melons, Dugonias, and beetroot. Wow, this is the biggest fuck you a recipe's ever given me so far. Dugonias, handled. Fortunately, we have the beetroot seeds, so that's sorted out. Now we need the other 3 things. Melons, which I thought would be bad until I wandered right into them, and that structure I neglected to remove from the face of the earth. How fortunate. Glistering melons is just gold nuggets surrounding a melon, so that's solved. Next, we need lilac and magenta dye, which was a whole day ordeal, and I didn't see a single one. We got some more bones so we can make more elemental soil, but nonetheless, I feel pretty cheated right now. Anyways, I warped home and ended the day. Day 86, wandered back into the woods and found lilac, which I hoarded in order to make a sort of flower farm, which should make farming these flowers later much easier. With both magenta and lilac figured out, I finally did the ritual for the Perescia flowers. Downside is I was dumb and crafted them straight into bulbs the moment I got each one, so the quest ain't done yet despite me having exactly 3. Oh well, since that's taken care of, I guess we can focus on more of the bone meal, more soil, and to speed up the growth of the crops and flowers. I spent the rest of the daytime fishing. Unironically, I'd love to play a fishing game where you're in a fantasy land fishing up super not real sea creatures. Once night fell, I upgraded my cleaver with quartz, which gives it Tinker's version of sharpness. Then I wandered the desert for skeletons, and this time instead of only 2, we had an actual decent amount to get bones. Came back with a large amount of bone meal ready and increased our Perescia flower farm size. I also determined that we should probably replace the aqueous ones with Terran ones since the auto harvesting probably doesn't help much, but this determination was made at the start of day 87, where I dived into the hole, made Terran soil, and slowly replaced the useless soil with a more useful one. The automatic harvesting did seem to work work briefly as I was replacing it, but I'm already in a committed relationship with terra and soil, and the time it took for it to work itself out took too long for me personally. After swapping soil, I moved my wildroot farm down to the terra and soil. I then used a bunch of bone meal from the blocks I hadn't used for soil and sped through pretty much an entire harvest cycle, completing the Pereskia flower quest. After which, I determined I'd work towards getting cloudberries so I can start casting valuable spells, such as early game flight type stuff. However, it is currently nighttime and we need to head to a swamp for a flower, so I opted to sleep the day away. Honestly, it's really weird how this questline is going. Wasn't I supposed to be going through immersive engineering at the same time? It feels like all I needed was steel for this chapter and I haven't seen anything since. Anywho, day 88, time to tiptoe through the tulips, or technically blue orchids, whatever, it's a dated reference, have some whimsy. Though while doing this orchid quest, of which I found some, I also figured I might as well ravage the entire garden for any flower I found. After all, I have no idea how many of these we're going to actually need, so better to stock up while I'm ahead. Plus, if they aren't useful for anything, then at least we can get petals easily. After getting all the flowers I believed I could find, I worked back home, planted the orchids, and then scrounged around for shears I misplaced in the plastic island we call my storage. After retrieving them, I got some leaves and did some lawn trimming. Remember folks, it's very important to keep your bush under control. Always consult your loved ones for advice before doing such a trim. Their opinion is important. Anyways, we got cloudberries now, completing the quest and starting that farm. I might as well be playing Stardew Valley at this rate with all this, farm management I'm doing. We're gonna need the cloudberries for spells though, so I'm not opposed. Plus we unlocked a new plant we have to farm for. Guess we'll get cracking on that during the next day. At least that's what I would say if on day 89 we didn't spend the whole day sorting out our ever-increasing inventory problem. Ignoring the reality-bending powers of diamonds giving chests liminal storage, a new small storage box and a few diamond chests should be enough for now. Spent all day sorting that inventory out. Maybe next episode I can dedicate some time making an actual proper storage room. That's a maybe though, if I remember it. And considering I can't even remember what I had for breakfast, that seems a little unlikely. Day 90. Okay, now let's get Moonglow leaves. First off, we need to start a birch farm as these require birch to be made. And fortunately for us, the birch wasn't too far from home. So I got the birch farm and just turned all the birch logs I acquired into the birch bark. 4 stacks seems like enough. Now it's on to the part I dread. The rest outside of Cloudberry is nether materials. And for some reason, I have a sneaking suspicion I'm going to be ready to sucker punch a newborn after this. First off, pigmen started attacking me. For no reason. Aren't they supposed to be aggroed from me swinging at them? Why do they hate me right now? You know what? That's fine. No, oh, look! A big spider that splits into other spiders, and yep, okay, I already died. Cool. Alright, second time can't be as bad, right? Nope, fuck you. I'm not putting up with this purple space invader looking bastard. No, would you look at that? It's another enemy with no reasonable cooldown on its attacks. Wow! Cool! I am now beginning to come to the conclusion that the Divine RPG mod is less balanced than a paraplegic person trying to tightrope while shit-faced. Go back in, grab my shit, and leave. Fortunately, I got everything I needed prior to my last death. If I have to visit the Nether before a reasonable upgrade again, it will be too soon. Next day. God! Day 91. Moonglow leaves time. Glowstone, nether reeds, make a nether reed farm just in case, quartz block, Pereskia, and birch bark. Now we have these leaves. I went ahead and yoinked some of the soil from our potatoes to make room for 2 more Moonglow leaf seeds. After getting that farm set up, we must now acquire Runic shears, which fortunately isn't hard. All it takes is 1 of our Pereskia, 2 runestones, compressed obsidian, and a new pair of shears. We had to do some resource scrounging up from our haphazard storage though, since we needed to do the weird shear recipe and compressed obsidian. After crafting these 2 items, we used the Fey Crafter to combine it all into Runic shears. This is a super important tool to get us not only more plants we have to farm for, but also Fey leather for armor in this mod. Let's sleep this day away though so we can get on with the next steps. Day 92. Alright, so after the unlock of these shears, we have several options to go through before we can do the final quest of roots. For starters, Fey leather is literally able to be done now as you just shear a cow, which magically gives you this leather without actually killing it. Not sure if it just means the cow is now shaved or if I just removed the skin, but better not to think too hard on the logistical implications of this. Bottom line, quest is done. Next, we can easily obtain willed wheat and spirit herb, as it just requires us to use these shears on basic wheat and beetroot respectively. We can then use these resources to turn them into seeds so we don't actually need to use the shears again to get more. The next farmable is the Shroom for this mod, but that requires us to make a dark room, so let's instead make the wild root wood. This requires a ritual that needs a spirit herb, wild root, bone meal, dark oak bark, and a dugonia. However, it also requires a nearby fully grown wild root crop. The reason for this is because the wild root crop that is fully grown is going to be replaced with a wild root tree when the ritual's finished. So I'm just gonna take this soil real quick, don't mind me, and I started farming dark oak again, and then did the ritual, which magically formed a tree, though there is one downside. It doesn't drop saplings. So if we need more wild root trees, we basically need to constantly do this ritual. A little annoying, but I'm sure there's a valid balancing reason, or at the very least we can automate it later. Now that we have the wild root tree, that completes another quest, meaning we cleared out literally 4 quests in one day. Not bad. Now we just gotta figure out the mushrooms. We'll start on that in the next day. Day 93. Mushrooms require a room with minimal light to farm, and fortunately for us, we now have tons of real estate thanks to my mass land destruction escapades, so I spent the entire day making the shroom room. This now allows us to farm for both of the overworld mushrooms, of which I just used bone meal to give myself an obscene amount immediately. That being said, we do have to go to the Nether to get the rest of the ingredients, but at least we have most of the process dealt with. Let's look on the bright side. Day 94. Hell beckons for me as I must quest for the hell shrooms. Luckily this time it was a lot less of a pain in the fanny though. I had close calls a couple times and I now have an extreme hate for these eggplants, but overall this trip was pretty tame and I got the other mushrooms with pretty much no problem. At the end of my trip, I heard the telltale sound of a creature spamming fireballs at an unreasonable rate, so I warped home, pretty much rolling right into day 95. I placed all my shrooms down outside the shroom room because they emit light, and I'm hoping they work similarly to other mushrooms where they spread, but if not, then I'll find a way to boost them. But now we can do this ritual for the last plant ingredient in the quest line. At least, what I thought to be the last. Once I ran the ritual and mass-produced mushrooms, I then went to see that we had more plants to go. Infernal bulbs, which, would you believe it, requires the nether again. Well, as I always say, I may be a bottom, but I ain't no bitch. Straight into hell I go. Maybe I'll get lucky. That's what I would have said if this ordeal didn't take multiple days. Finding the magma flower seed was a bit annoying but manageable. However, the agave is what took day 95 through 97. This quest book said it's all over the nether. Fucking where? I scoured the whole nether looking for agave for in-game days, only to find out that the line is full of shit. It's only in desert areas in the nether. So basically I discovered this detail on my own, and to emphasize just how annoyingly rare this was to find, I found 3 entirely different fortresses before finding even one biome with agave. Better Nether is the most misleading title I've ever heard, at least for the version Divine Journey 2 is built on. Anyways, at least it's done now, so we can start this ritual on the start of day 97. I went ahead and did the ritual for the Infernal Bulb using all the recipes we spent days on, then bone mealed the hell out of it because there's no way I'm going back to the nether this soon, completing this quest and unlocking another ingredient and seemingly the final one of the quest lines. Stalactite, which this time we actually have everything we need. God, I'm glad I vein mined this stupid nether plant a while ago. Get the ingredients, do the ritual, stalactite made. Bone meal it, and we now have the Infernal Bulb and stalactite farm set. Now for the last quest for the Roots chapter. Artificial Scarab Wings, which we can actually do right now. Yeah, this recipe is basically pretty much instantly possible the moment you get stalactite. Slap that shit into the Fade Crafter, and like that, the Roots chapter has concluded. But we're not done yet. Normally this is where I'd end a video, but there's a couple other things I'd like to do first, and we'll get into that once we start the next day. Day 98. Alright, so here's our real final goals. Goal number 1, I want some spells. I think it'd be really silly to go through the Roots mod and not touch the bread and butter of this entire mod, and I'm sure if I didn't, I'd never hear the end of it from you guys in the comments. Our second goal is finishing up removing this mountain, which we will start with because I think it's by far the least interesting of the 2 tasks to do and watch, so I'll do a time skip and let you know if anything of interest transpires. Day 100! Guys, looky! Day 100! Day 100, guys! I can now put it in my video tags and further saturate an oversaturated format! Jokes aside, I did have a couple things worth mentioning today. First off, on day 99, I did get a Mark III Dank Knoll, which is currently the highest we can go until further down the quest line. Secondly, I did want to use 100-day increments to recap our journey so far. Mostly because I imagine down the line I'm going to re-upload the entire series as a complete video with the intro recaps removed to make it consistent, so let's do that recap now. We started our journey with sticks and stones, unable to craft things as basic as a chest, progressed to gaining access to basic storage and massive storage. Further down the line, learning totem magic, which led to killing an ancient deity, moved on to both making ritual sites for moon magic and starting the Industrial Revolution. And now here we are on day 100, where I'm now about to become a moon god and flatten this entire mountain. Insane progression, all things considered. Anyways, I'm still flattening the mountain, so back to our time skipping. Okay, that's as much of my tism can muster for right now. Nothing else really, worth mentioning happened, just a lot of mountain flattening for days 100 through 103. Onwards to spells. Day 104. Alright, let's get the cool flight spell. We need to visit the nether again for bone spores, which while I would dive right in, we have a pretty particular problem. My diamond armor has seen better days. So let's make this Roots armor instead to replace it. While it will provide less defense overall, it does actually give a chance to not consume spell materials. We crafted some steel armor to use in the recipe, gathered the amethyst and birch bark, and we now have sylvan armor. Only thing we gotta figure out now is how to make up for my now less than desirable defense, which I think I have a solution. Unfortunately, it's going to have to wait though, because I got, tired of walking between bases and decided to finally move my ore chest, which took the rest of the time up until day 105. That being said, it is time to finally make that diamond shield. The diamond shield should help mitigate the lack of defense. However, I can't use my cleaver while this is in hand because apparently a cleaver has a right-click function. Weird. We'll figure that out later. Time to dive back into Tartarus, and it still lights me on fire for using a shield. Why the fuck did I even craft this then? If it's not gonna stop the actual threat of this enemy's projectile, then I might as well not even use it! I tried to give benefit of the doubt that I can work around the nonsense difficulty of Divine RPG Nether mobs, but now I have verifiable proof that I'm justified when I atomize them with peaceful mode. So I'm going to continue doing that until I need these assholes. This part of the mod stinks. As a matter of fact, it might be the worst part of the whole mod pack. I have enjoyed everything but this exact bullshit. Anyways, I found the bone spores and warp home. We now have the ability to make the soaring spell. I gotta make some of the prerequisites though, like the arrows for roots, so we won't make it on this day, but it's definitely getting done on the following one. Day 106, we crafted the soaring spell after fixing that I made congealed slime instead of a slime block, whoops. After which I fiddled around with the imbuer for most of the day until remembering we actually need the gramarye to add the spell to our staff, and once I remembered that step, I simply added the dust to the spell, then the gramarye into the imbuer. Our staff now knows the ability for us to have early game flight. This is awesome, and in hindsight probably would have come in handy when flattening that mountain. Oh well, hindsight is 20/20, but my foresight is blind as hell. That being said, I want to do one more thing before we end the episode. Make a pouch upgrade, which I had all the ingredients to do. Wasn't really all that hard, but now we have far more room for spell ingredients, which brings us to the end of today's episode. So far, I'm still very much enjoying the mod pack outside of the Nether bullshit, but you know, you take what you can get. You take the good with the bad. And right now, everything else is so amazing to go through that I'm having a genuinely good time. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I'm hoping through 2026 I can continue to entertain you the way I do now, if not more so. And as always, thank you to our members for helping to keep the lights on. Your support is truly invaluable, and I'm super grateful for it. If you like what you saw here today, you know what to do. This has been the Bottom Dweller. The timer for Greg starts now, lads.